Hello peeps and welcome back to Modded Minecraft with Nightdagger. We're on episode 38 and we got a lot of crap to do this episode again, so let's get right into it. Last episode we finished up the lubrication production, and I also went ahead off camera and did pretty much the same thing I did with the lubricant with my jet fuel, because we're going to need a lot of jet fuel going forward, and I want this thing to be able to run gangbusters in producing jet fuel for me. We're going to need tons of it. And no, not because we're going to be relying on gas turbines for much longer, because we're not. We are still going to use micro turbines because these things are super useful and very fuel efficient for the amount of power they give, especially for like making jet fuel, which we're going to need a lot of. But I have an ender tank up here, transfer node with 5 stack upgrades in it. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to require to keep up with this thing once it ramps up to speed. You guys will see in a second here. Yeah, the GUI can't even it can't even keep up. 5 stack upgrades cannot keep up. It's just crazy. Look how fast we're getting jet fuel in here. Yes, that's about 20 buckets a second. But this episode is not about making jet fuel, so let's turn that off for now. This episode is about breaking bedrock. Now, I was going to do this in the overworld, but I've decided that there's a better place for breaking bedrock, and that's the nether. We're going to go to the nether to do this. Now, I have done a little bit of math off camera, and I have figured out, well, you know what, let's go ahead and build the bedrock breaker first. I have 10 sintered tungsten ingots from earlier when I was making stuff, so I didn't smelt up any of my tungsten off camera. There's a reason for it. We'll get into that probably starting next episode. The bedrock breaker. This thing requires 2 diamonds, HSLA steel, base panels, obsidian, and sintered tungsten. Well, right away we have a problem, because I'm out of diamonds. I used all of my diamonds. Ha! Great. Alright, so let's go ahead and, you know what, let's go hijack this grinder for just a second. We'll come upstairs and fire up our lubricant production. I also have a jet fuel reserve thing here now too, so I have 1,922 buckets of jet fuel. I still have not put a sound muffler on this. It's already done with my diamonds. That's crazy. Okay, let's flip this on to handle our canola husks. Holy crap, it's already done with all of those diamonds. That's insane. I wasn't expecting that. Oh. Okay, well then. So, bedrock breaker. Oh, come on, what am I missing? Base panels? Oh, dirt has to be made in a workbench, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, so we need some steel. We need 2 diamonds. We need a piece of obsidian. We need 2 of those sintered tungsten. So, 3 base panels. 2 of you. 1 of you. 1 of you. And 2 of you should give me a bedrock breaker. The bedrock breaker, as you might guess, can break bedrock. However, it has some limitations. It takes a long time to do it, and it cannot break the bottom layer of bedrock in a world. You can't punch your way into the void using this thing. It also requires 16 kilonewton meters of torque, 16,384 newton meters, with a minimum power of 4.194 megawatts. That's 2 microturbines. However, 2 microturbines would require, let's go ahead and turn this off. I'm sure it's done by now. And we'll turn this one off too. I'll come back and finish that off camera. Yeah, we got plenty of lubricant. I did some math off camera, and getting that to work, not only would it be at the bare minimum speed pretty much that the thing is capable of running at, but it would also take a 16-to-1, a 16-to-1, and a 2-to-1 gearbox. Microturbines are cheap enough, and I want to have enough of them on hand going forward, that I went ahead and made 4 microturbines for this task. We're also going to need 2 16-to-1 gearboxes. Now, I have those in my inventory. You might wonder what happened to the gearbox that was in my ME system that was damaged. It was 35% damaged because I forgot to put the lubricant in it. I forgot that if you right-click a gearbox with a gear, not a gear set like a gear unit, but actual just regular gears, that you can actually repair the damage done to it. Now, sometimes you get like 1% repair for a gear. I think I had to use 6 of them on this gearbox in order to get it back to 0. But I went ahead and filled them with lubricant. We're good to go. We're also going to need some bevel gears because we're going to need to change directions a bit here. We're also going to need some shaft units, or some shaft junctions and some shaft units, because we're going to need to transmit power at some pretty crazy angles in order to make this thing work to start. All right, so let's go ahead, and we're also going to need one last thing, a chunk loader. So, and I lied, we're going to need one more thing. We're going to need a way to fuel these engines. So, down we go. I totally forgot my tank. Damn it. Oh well, we'll hijack this one. I'm not going to need it for a while. It needs to be refueled anyway. Up. We'll go ahead and transfer fuel out of our tank into our resonant tank. I suppose I could just give it a direct connection. I could put a second valve in here, put an ender tank on this thing, and have that on machines that need constant fuel. But I'm too lazy right now. Okay, let's go upstairs. We're going to go to the Nether. Now, just so happens when I was fighting the Wither up here, he did me a favor. The area up here that I punched through the ceiling, in the area that I was fighting the Wither, he did some pretty serious damage to the roof, didn't he? So, we are going to punch our way through here, and we're going to see if we can figure out a good way to punch our way through to the top layer. Now, we're probably going to have to move this thing a couple of times. So I think what I want to do is I want to punch out these 2 blocks right here. So we're going to put the bedrock breaker on there. I forgot a screwdriver. Love this charge porter. As long as you remember to recharge it. Never forget your screwdriver, kiddies. Okay, give me my charge porter back. I don't like that it only has enough power stored in it for 1 teleportation. If you're teleporting from another dimension, but, I mean, what are you going to do? Well, there is something we can do, but that'll come later in the series. Back up we go. Alright, let's find where I stuck the bedrock breaker. It's right there. We need to turn him so that he is pointing up, so the green is pointing down. There we go. From there, we're going to run a diamond shaft. Remember, red is an output, green is an input. So we need the red to be pointing up. And here too. On all of these, the red needs to be pointing up. There we go. On here, we're going to put a bevel gear. In order to change the direction, we're going to take in power from the east and output it to the up. On here, we're going to put our shaft junctions. Remember, red is the output, green is the input. So the red needs to be pointing that way. Now I'm going to put up 2 more of these things. We didn't need 4 shaft junctions, we only needed 3, but I brought 3 anyway. We're going to change them all like that. Now we can put the micro turbines on here. Rotate these around properly so that they actually face shaft junctions. We're going to put our tank down, get Mr. Bucket, and we're going to bucket fuel into these. Now, we're going to get some grinding effects to start out. Because these things are running at different speeds, this can't merge the power. There. 5 buckets in each should work for now. One last thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put down our chunk loader, because we need this chunk to be loaded at all times. And I'm going to set a radius of 3 chunks. Means we're keeping 25 chunks loaded in the nether. If we come up here, actually, you know what, I should have brought my angular transducer too. Let's go get that. This thing will continue to run even if I'm not here now. So we're going to go home and get my angular transducer. And I think we're going to get a couple of more diamond shafts because we're going to need to move this thing a couple of times. So I need a mount, which is a base panel, some tin, we'll get our angular transducer while we're here. Recover my charged porter, get that off my hotbar, and go ahead and do this. Now, some of you may have caught my mistake, because I just did. What did I do? I didn't put the gearboxes in. I'm a noob. So, we're going to have to move the setup a little bit. I don't want to go through the trouble of taking all of the... I don't want to go through the trouble of spinning these things up again. You can see this thing is not running. So, we're going to break these out. And on the end of this, we're going to put our 16:1 gearboxes. You. These need to be in torque mode, which they are. Bevel gear goes here. taking power from the east, outputting to the up. From here, we need to punch a hole straight up into the bedrock. Looks like we're good. Bedrock breaker goes right there. Rotate him around. Shafts, shafts, shafts. Shafts for days. Rotate these. Okay, and we can hear something happening. The bedrock breaker is actually working. Now, the bedrock breaker takes a long time to do its thing. We are currently giving it twice the power it requires, and it's still going to take probably in excess of 2 or 3 minutes per piece of bedrock. What the bedrock breaker does, the first thing that it does is it transforms the piece of bedrock that it's working on into something called a bedrock slice. So this bedrock here will become something else. It will change this into a bedrock slice. It will then very slowly chip away at the bedrock, 2 pixel layers at a time, for a total of 8 more operations. And then after those 8 more operations are done, it'll break, and you'll get 2 pieces of bedrock dust. Bedrock dust is used for a lot of things. Now, one of the things that it can be used for is to make bedrock, but it takes 8 bedrock dust around a piece of stone to make a piece of bedrock. So you actually have to break 4 pieces of bedrock to get 1. It's not a cheap process. You can see here the operational time on this thing is reporting 16.45 seconds. That's the amount of time it takes to carve 1 slice away. So it has to go through that 16.45 second thing a total of 8 times, or a total of 9 times, because the first one transforms it into the bedrock slice, and then after that it transforms it into smaller and smaller pieces of it. Okay, the bedrock slice is a hidden item. Can't see it in any eye. But we will know when it's done because we'll hear a tonk. If we take a look at this with our angular transducer, we're going to see it is receiving 8.389 megawatts at 512 rad per second. We're going to go ahead and leave this thing to run for a second, and we're going to go home and get another item. Or 2. Probably 2. Because recovery of bedrock is not automatic. There's no way you can just tell the thing, hey, when you're done getting the bedrock, pump it into a chest. You have to right-click the thing. I don't want to stand there and wait for it to do its work, so we're going to get something that can right-click for us. We're going to get an autonomous activator. A couple of 10 gears. Redstone reception coil, piston, and a chest. There we go. Autonomous activator. Now, these things require power now, so you have to have an energy cell. Just so happens I have a hardened one here ready to go. We're also going to get another rotary craft item, because I want to be able to show you guys exactly how much power this thing is getting. So we're going to make ourselves a dynamometer, which is a screen, a shaft unit, an ender pearl, and a mount. Screen is pretty easy to make, actually. We're going to need a shaft. We're going to need an ender pearl. And we're going to need a mount. We may also need a chest. I'm not sure if we're going to need the chest or not. Okay, mount, shaft units, ender pearl, screen. Did I get that backwards? Yeah, I got it backwards. Dynamometer. Alright. Let's go ahead and recover our charged porter, get it off the hotbar. The dynamometer, when hooked in line with machines, will transmit, or will tell you, the total amount of power that the machine is getting, or that is passing through it, and the torque and speed that it's working at. So, once this piece of bedrock is done breaking, and we move our setup, which it sounds like it's still working, but you can see it's bored through. The piece of bedrock that it was sitting on to begin with is not there anymore. Did I actually get bedrock dust from that? Like, has it actually punched through already? It has! Haha! We punched through one piece of bedrock. So, we're working on our second. Why did I not get the achievement for that? Rotary craft. Run an extractor at 1 tick operation in 4 stages. Because it wants me to be able, I have to be able to run an extractor at 1 tick operation time for all 4 stages before I can get the bedrock thing. What? Oh well, whatever. Not that big a deal. So what we're really waiting for is for this bedrock breaker to completely punch through to the roof. Now, unfortunately, at this point, all we can really do is sit here and wait, because we need it to, we need this thing to punch through. We need to be able to get up to the roof. Once we can get up to the roof, then we're going to move this setup. Come on. Unfortunately, guys, a lot of this episode is going to be sitting here watching this happen. This may be one of the few times when I actually cut an episode so that you guys don't have to sit here and watch this. I think I'm actually going to do that. I know I'm not big on cuts, but the only thing I'm doing is sitting here watching this bedrock breaker run, and I don't want you guys to have to sit here through 10 minutes of just watching this thing work. So, what I'm going to do, and all I'm going to do while I'm off camera, is I'm going to wait for this thing to punch a hole through the nether. I'm going to move it to this block right here. We're going to repeat that, and then we're going to go set this thing up on the roof. So, I'm going to cut right here. I will be back in a few minutes when we're ready to take the next step. See you then. Alright, I'm back. It's been a while. I went ahead and punched myself a 2x2 hole through here so that I have room to do everything that I need to do. I did also go ahead and hook up the dynamometer, so you guys can see here that it is getting 16.384 kilonewton meters through these gearboxes. Just for a point of reference, if I were to shift right click this, it'll tell you the torque is now 64 Newton meters at 131 kilorad. So yeah, this thing is really useful for being able to tell what kind of output you're getting. But let's go ahead and get this bedrock breaker set up in its final home, which is going to be pretty much right here. Now, in previous versions of Rotary Craft, the bedrock breaker would only go out at like 4 blocks and then it would stop. So you'd have to bore 4 blocks and then you'd have to move it and come back, and yeah, you don't have to do that anymore, thankfully. It now has effectively an unlimited range. So, bevel gear there, bevel gear there. This one is going to output to the east. It's going to take power from up. This one's going to input from east, output to down. Or input from west, output to down. All we need to do is connect the diamond shaft, and we're boring. You can see it instantly transforms this into a bedrock slice. The operational speed on this thing is 16.45 seconds. That means every 16.45 seconds it's going to carve 1 pixel worth of bedrock out of there. Now, not 1 pixel, it's going to carve 1 slice worth of pixels down. After it gets done with carving the 16th of those slices, it's going to break. So, we need to put an autonomous activator on this thing so that we are, able to recover the stuff from it. We're going to put a hardened energy cell on top of that. You are allowed to output power down. That's going to give power to the autonomous activator. Now, the autonomous activator, I don't know if the autonomous activator is going to get the bedrock, or if it's going to force the bedrock breaker to give up its bedrock. So we're going to put a chest on top of here. When this thing finishes breaking its layer of bedrock, which it's currently on its 4th slice, I think. I don't know, it's hard to tell with bedrock. 1, 2, 3, I think we're actually on our 5th slice now. So, once it's done, we'll see if it's going to go into the autonomous activator or if it's going to go into the chest. In the meantime, while we're waiting for it, I noticed something unusual when I got up here. I am on top of the nether, so we can kind of gauge where my access port is by my portal waymark, our portal waypoint, so we don't have to worry about getting lost. So I did a little bit of, poking around while I was up here, and I noticed, you can see there's mushrooms growing off in the distance here, which is kind of cool. I didn't know mushrooms could grow on top of the nether. I don't generally go on top of the nether too much, but it's kind of cool. But there's something else that I noticed. In the patch of mushrooms over here, or close to it, there's a gravestone that populated up here that actually has punched through the bedrock. Now, there's bedrock underneath it, so this isn't a way to get up. But, if somehow you were to, manage to get trapped up here, it looks like this hellbark has actually punched the whole way through. So I guess if you were to, somehow get caught in the nether, this would be a way to get out. If you were to get caught on top of it, that is. So, yeah, that's something I didn't know. I didn't even see the hellbark over there. That's kind of cool. Alright, how are we doing with our slice? Looks like we're most of the way through. You can kind of gauge it by looking at the thing. Now, I'm probably going to want to put a better energy cell up here. Although this thing isn't really using a lot of power. As a matter of fact, right now it's using none. Redstone control is disabled. Augmentation, we don't need any augments. We don't need to worry about the aim level. Yeah, depending on how this actually handles it, I might need to put a vacuum hopper up here connected to a chest. Actually, let's take the chest off, because if it does anything, it's not going to put it right into the chest. If it does anything, it's going to spit it out. So let's take my ring of magnetization off so I can see what it does. Because we're just about through this layer. Then you might notice I had... Oh, there we go. It just broke. I don't see any bedrock up here. Okay, it did go into the autonomous activator, so we don't need to worry about anything else. This system is now pretty much self-sustaining. It'll continue running for basically as long as these engines have fuel. And from my understanding, the bedrock breaker kind of works like the other rotary craft machines in that it keeps the area that it's working at chunk loaded. So as long as I keep the engines and everything around it chunk loaded, the bedrock breaker should continue running pretty much forever. As long as these engines have fuel. So let's make sure these engines have sufficient fuel. I could stand here and bucket forever, but that's no good. Let's go back home. One of these days, when my porter actually finishes, thank you. Throw that in there. Let's get ourselves a tank. We're going to get a... No, I don't want a reinforced. I want a hardened tank. So we'll go ahead and make ourselves a hardened portable tank. Get our charged porter back. Head back to the nether. I always turn the wrong way. Now, you see why I left that, why I did the 4x4 hole? Yeah, it is actually necessary. Alright, so let's go about making sure our turbines have sufficient fuel. We're going to do that by filling up a hardened portable tank from our resonant tank, and then popping the hardened tank on top of this lamellar pipe and just pumping fuel directly into, I said pumping fuel directly into the turbine. I forgot you can't pump fuel into the back of these things, can you? You have to pump it in from the bottom, which means I'd have to break a layer of bedrock out in front of all of these things, or move them up one. I could move them up. Let's go ahead and move these things up a level. Won't be that hard. All I gotta do is drain the fuel out. Which it kind of sucks because I just got done putting fuel into these things. Alright, and we'll drop the hammer and break these things. This now becomes a shaft unit. Which needs to be set to output to the down. Like that. Bevel gear on top, which outputs down, receives from west. On that, we'll put our dynamometer. He needs to output that way. On this, we'll put our two gearboxes. And these have to both be turned around. On that, we'll put our three shaft junctions. These need to be turned so that red is in and green is facing me. Just like that. Turbines. Let's go ahead and pull the servo off of there. Turbines. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rotate them into face. And pull you up, pull you up. We're going to give each one 2 buckets to get it going. Because these things burn a lot of fuel getting wound up. Once they are wound up to speed, they don't consume much fuel to keep running at top speed. We'll see that in a moment here. With the angular transducer, if we check this thing, it's going to tell us it only has 2 minutes and 38 seconds of fuel. That's not good. That's burning fuel really, really, really fast. But if we sit here and wait, once that thing spins up, and you guys will get to see that in a minute here. Once that thing spins up, that'll change. Okay, now let's give this thing some fuel. Wait for the super laminar to run dry. I'm going to fuel the one on the end last so that you guys can see the difference that makes. And we can see that our power is now leveling out because our engines are matching speed. Now that all of the engines have matched speed, it's running at full efficiency again. And if we check the fuel on this now it's telling us it has 5 minutes of fuel. And that's only with 1.3 buckets of fuel in it. So, once a microturbine winds up, it uses much less fuel for operation. But it uses a lot of fuel to get there. We got some more bedrock. Good deal. Go ahead and put a bucket in him, or 32 buckets in him. If we take a look at this now, it's telling us it has 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 35 minutes of fuel. That's a good start, but it's not a great start. Now, we want more. I think I can actually get away with doing this. I don't know if this is going to share equally like I really want it to, but we're going to do it anyway. Damn it. On there, and drain. Looks like it's sharing pretty equally. About 106,000 millibuckets in each. Yeah, pretty close. 7 hours, 4 minutes, and 16 seconds of fuel. I can dig it. So we'll just leave this thing to run, and we'll go do whatever the hell we want. Because it's all chunk loaded, we don't have to worry about it. So, now we can go get started on other stuff. I don't have much time left this episode, so I'm going to explain what else we're going to need to do to get this HTGR running. So, we're going to need to craft some components, and some of those components are going to be really expensive. We need some pebble bed reactor cores. And I'm going to craft this stuff off camera probably. So this is why I'm showing you guys now. We're going to need some pebble bed reactor cores. Actually, some of it I'm not going to craft off camera. The stuff that I have the capability to make now, I will. But anything that requires anything I haven't shown you guys yet, I won't. Pebble bed reactor cores take a fuel core, hoppers, base panels, yada yada. A fuel core takes these fuel canisters which require cadmium, indium, silver alloy. which has to be made in a blast furnace, and the blast furnace has to be at 1500 degrees Celsius. Well, that's a problem, because our blast furnace is only at 612 or 621 degrees Celsius, so we need to get this thing hotter. There's a way to do it. We'll cover that next episode. We're also going to need some carbon dioxide heat exchangers, which is really easy. Steam boiler and plates. Steam boiler is also really easy. It's a reservoir, which is basically rotary press version of a tank. I don't like using them because they don't hold much, and they're kind of derpy about how they drain, so I don't like using them, but they work. So we're going to need some of those. We're also going to need some steam boilers, but we're also going to need a heat exchanger. Not a carbon dioxide heat exchanger, but a heat exchanger, which is cooling fins made either with shaft units and base panels, or the cheaper recipe is copper and tin. Only gets you 2 instead of 3, but honestly, who doesn't have copper and tin in shades, right? So we're going to need some of those. We're going to need some steam line, which is liquid pipe, which you've already seen, and pink wool. So I'll probably make some of this off camera. We're going to need a steam grate, which is liquid pipe, HSLA steel, yada yada, all that good stuff. We're going to need some turbines, 5 of them to be exact. That's going to require propeller blades, which you've seen before, but it's also going to require these steam turbine cores, which you have not. Steam turbine cores require a compound turbine. That you've seen before. That takes the sintered tungsten, the shaft core, and the turbine. We had to use these when we made our gas turbine, right? So we're going to need 5 of these, which means we need 20 sintered tungsten. But we're also going to need this tungsten carbide ingot, which is made using a pulse jet furnace and tungsten carbide flakes, which requires coal dust and tungsten carbide and tungsten flakes. That's why I didn't smelt up all my tungsten, is because we need them to make this tungsten carbide. We actually need 40 of these in order to make 1 turbine. And depending on which version of this recipe we go with, I might need 2 turbines, which means we would need 10 of those turbine blocks, which means we'd need 80 of those ingots. Pulse jet furnace. Is made with a diffuser, a compressor, a combustor, liquid pipes, yada yada, obsidian, to get a pulse jet furnace. This thing has a minimum speed of 131 kilorad. That's pretty much exactly what a microturbine can provide. So let's get our rotary craft handbook here and take a look at engines. Microturbine puts out 131 kilorad. Gas turbine puts out 65.5 kilorad, but at a much higher rate. We might actually use the gas turbine to run that pulse jet furnace, because we're not going to run the pulse jet furnace for very often, but when we do, we're going to want it to run like gangbusters. This thing produces so much more power. I mean, I could ramp this thing up like so hardcore, it's unbelievable. However, bear in mind that we're approaching the limit that we can get with diamond. If we take a look at the table of contents, where is it? Material properties, shaft load limits. Diamond can only take 4 million rad. Now it sounds like a lot, but if we take, let me pull up my calculator real quick. If we take that 1024 torque that the, if we take the 1024 newton meters of torque that the gas turbine puts out, and we run that through a 16 rather, not a 64, a 16x gearbox, that gives us 64. We run that through a 16x gearbox, that gives us 4. We run that through a 4x gearbox, that gives us 1 rad, right? Or 1 newton meter of force. The gas turbine doesn't require any minimum torque. It just requires pure raw speed. If we get down to our processing and pull up the pulse jet furnace, yeah, it just requires pure, unadulterated speed to run. However, if we take the pulse jet, or if we take the gas turbine, 65,536 rad. If we multiply that by 16, we're already at 1,000,000 rad. We multiply that by 16, we're at 16 million rad. Multiply that by 4, we're getting 67 million rad at 1 Newton meter. That's going to snap a diamond gear like nothing. We could get away with putting through one 16x gearbox, but beyond that, we would need bedrock. Bedrock gears are actually a thing. A bedrock gear requires a blast furnace, 5 HSLA steel, and 4 bedrock dust to get 8 bedrock gears. It also requires a blast furnace at 1,000 degrees Celsius. Again, hotter than our current blast furnace can get. The 2X gear units require bedrock shafts, which is just a regular shaft unit with 4 bedrock dusts around it to get 4 of them. Again, higher than we can reach. So, we're going to have to figure out a way to get that blast furnace hotter. That's where we're going to start next episode. After that, we're going to get the pulse jet furnace. I don't think I'm going to ramp it up into super gangbusters right away. I think a gas turbine running on the thing, just put through a 16-to-1 gearbox, I think putting 1,000,000 rad into it is going to get it going plenty fast for us. So we're not going to ramp it up like super crazy, but we're definitely going to want to get it running really fast because we don't want to run that thing often, but when we do, we want it to get its job done. And a lot of these machines, if you're running them at the bare minimum requirement, work really, really slow. I don't like slow. I like fast. So we're going to aim for fast on that. However, like I said, that's going to be something we're going to get into next episode. So next episode, we're going to get the final pieces of processing in place that we're going to need to handle the bedrock, that we're going to need to handle the tungsten carbide, that we're going to need to handle all of the good stuff we're going to need to go forward. We're going to craft all of the components that we need to make our high temperature gas turbine, high temperature gas reactor, whatever. And then in episode 40, we're going to put the thing together and we're going to rejoice in the fact that we're going to have enough power to drive pretty much anything that we want, at least short term. Long term, we're going to want to look at even better power options. But for right now, this has been Nightdagger with episode 38 of Let's Play Modded Minecraft, Season 5. Hope you guys are enjoying the series so far. I'll catch you later, peeps.